Okay, this video we're going to use to talk about threads in SolidWorks. Now there's two main ways to do this. One is really focused on modeling threads in a way that makes sense for us as we 3D print objects or physically create objects so we get the geometry exactly correct. The other way is meant more for if we're making drawings, we're making physical descriptions of things. It's going to make it so that it works better for our drawings. It's going to be easier to dimension. It might not have the detail and it's not going to have the same rendering. It's not going to look quite as realistic, but it's going to hold the information in a little bit more accessible way. So with that, the first way we're going to talk about is the hole wizard. So within hole wizard, if we want to add threading, we have this guy right here. We have another video that's talking a little bit more specifically about hole wizard in general. But with this, what we're going to do is we can go ahead and add a threaded hole on here. And you can see that I have this guy set up so that we have a 1/4-20 thread. Oops, just lost it. But when we add this 1/4-20 thread, is going to go ahead and make a hole pattern for the 1/4-20 thread. In this case, I have a little bit of a chamfer at the top, which is fine. We talk about how to get rid of that or change that if we want to in the hole wizard video, but what we're seeing here is that this is a smooth looking hole. Now, if we don't want it to be smooth looking, got a little bit behind there, we can, under the hole wizard, there is this thread option. And this is what we're going to use to physically add threads modeled to our part. So I have a pre-existing hole that I have as 1/4 inch. And again, you see that I have a 1/4-20 hole, a 1/4-20 thread being added here. So 1/4-20 right there, 1/4 inch hole, 20 threads per inch. And I'm physically adding that to the inside. I have two options here. I can have that either cut the thread or extrude the thread. That's happening down here at the bottom. Really, only one or the other is going to work depending on how you have your geometry set up. But it's really just whether it needs to remove material or add material. And it will figure that one out for you. So if I have my 1/4-20 thread all set up here, in this case, I'm going to need to extrude it because I have a hole and I need to add the threading to it. I will go ahead and set that up. What you saw there at the very bottom, I can make it a right-handed or a left-handed thread depending on my thread direction. And I can also select, just like I would with my normal extrusions, I can select either blind, which is how it was set up before, a blind and a distance, or I can use my up to command saying that I want to have this thread go up until a surface or a different part or how far I want it to go. I can have it so that if I change the size of this block, it'll automatically update it for me. So that is going to go ahead and add my thread, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the nuances about this later. But you can immediately see that my thread here has texture to it. It has something actually going on. There is definitely, like, I can see this. It's clearly threaded. And that means that when I 3D print it, it's going to be clearly threaded versus this guy, which was my hole wizard method. That is not going to come out as a threaded hole if I 3D printed it. So looking at the difference between those two is fairly obvious. It seems like, oh, I want that nice threading every single time. However, if I go in and I just saved it, but I make a drawing from this part, I pull my part into this drawing, I'm going to go ahead and use my hole wizard, which is right up here, my hole call out, sorry, in order to add a more detailed dimension to my piece. But if I use my hole call out and I use this hole wizard thread, I get a nice piece right here with all the information. If I try to use the same thing for hole call out on my Threaded hole using the other method, it doesn't work. I try using smart dimension. I can't get any more information. I can't even click on this inner circle because it's not a continuous pattern. But you're seeing right here, this guy is much more useful in our drawing. This is going to tell me all the information I need to know. This is going to make sure that the person who's actually manufacturing my part has everything they need to know, versus this guy down here. That just tells me about the hole. That doesn't give me any more information. That's not going to end up in a threaded hole for me if I just gave him that. So that is why we're using one versus the other. Now with the thread command, a couple extra things that we can do here. First thing I'm showing you is we're going to go ahead and hide our overall body, and we're going to look at if I actually wanted to have threads on the outside of something. I'm going to the same place. I've got my thread wizard, and in this case what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the outside of the cylinder, and I'm going to create my threading on the outside. So again, have to be careful whether I want cut or extrude. In this case, my extrude isn't going to work. I want my cut based off of my sizing, and it is actually going to add threads to my part so I could more or less make a screw or something like that. This is just showing that the other is not going to work. Going back to cut thread, last piece here is my offset. So as we're seeing here, my offset, what it's going to do is it's going to control the distance between my surface that I selected and where my threading starts. And this seems kind of weird. Why would I want to do this? Well, what we're looking at here is the very beginning of the thread is as if it were going to be manufactured. You actually have the tool come in somewhere. So my initial spot actually has a little bit of area where it's not continued. So I want it to be continuous all the way up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the direction of my thread. I'm going to go ahead and change it so that I start cutting my thread before my part shows up, meaning that in this case, I have a continuous thread that's going all the way past the edge. I'm threading everything in this direction, versus if I look at the other direction, if I hadn't done that offset, both ends would have this little weird end where this is the start or end of my threading. And I really only want that on one side. On the other side, I want it to just go straight to flat. So I threaded it and I just cut off the extra edge, which is a little bit more realistic for my overall part. Now what we can actually see is the male thread and the female thread, they're both 1/4-20. In this case, I actually got particularly lucky in that they lined up very well. Just by coincidence, I got things set up to the right spot. Everything was being taken from the same spot, so that made it line up particularly well. But what we can really see here, if I get to the point where we can see the interior of the part, give it a second, there we go, we can see all the hidden lines, we can see the interior. You can see that my male thread and my female thread, I now have created two pieces that would actually go together in real life. I've created my screw and the hole for the screw to go into. So that is really the two ways we're making threading, and a little tutorial on how to do that. Take care.